In this chapter, we're going to discuss how culture and gender impact communication. Let's explore some definitions. Culture is a system of learned and shared symbols, language, values, and norms that distinguish one group of people from another. We can understand culture simply as a foundation for how we understand ourselves. Here in the United States, we are primarily we would identify as an American culture. We primarily speak English. We value hard work and dedication, and our symbols might be the bald eagle or the American flag. Other cultures that are contained within the United States might be, an example might be the Cuban American community in Miami, where their primary language is Spanish, possibly more likely to be Catholic than Protestant, and having different values, even different interests in food and the way that they communicate with one another, personal space. All of those things are involved in culture. Society is a group of people who share symbols, language, values, and norms. Basically, a group of people who identify as having the same culture. Ethnicity is an individual's heritage or ancestry. Some examples of ethnicity might be European American or African American. Nationality is an individual's citizenship of a particular country. Our nationality, for those of us that are Americans, our nationality is American. Any other country could be identified as having a nationality. Ethnocentrism is a systematic preference for characteristics of one's own culture. How does ethnocentricity impact the way that members of the majority communicate with members of the minority? As we said, ethnocentrism is a preference for one's own culture or things within an individual's culture. One of these might be language. How do we, as Americans that primarily speak English, how do we communicate with members of the minority who may not speak English as their primary language? I have heard sentiments such as, you're in the United States, you need to learn English, or I have seen people talk louder to somebody who doesn't understand English, or also imply that the person is not intelligent because they do not speak English. Can you think of any examples in your life where you have seen somebody with an ethnocentric point of view communicate with a member of the minority here in the United States? For a personal challenge, when communicating with someone from a different culture, consider the way that how they might communicate and how that differs from how you communicate. Do they have a different concept of personal space or eye contact? And are you being culturally sensitive and accommodating for this individual? People from different cultures don't only communicate differently, but they may think differently. One way of examining how people from different cultures might think differently would be to divide cultures into two major categories. The first of which would be an individualistic culture. Now, this is a culture that emphasizes individuality and responsibility to oneself. The responsibility to oneself above responsibility to the community or to possibly one's family. Now, we have components of this in American culture where we take pride in our independence, where we take pride in hard work and being self-made. On the other hand, a collectivistic culture is a culture that emphasizes loyalty to the family, workplace, community, or nation, and that the importance placed on these needs to be above the needs of the individual. We might see some Asian cultures as good examples of collectivistic. What are some potential issues with communicating between people from these different types of cultures? An example might be a counselor working in a student center on campus with, this would be perhaps an American counselor with an Asian student, and the American counselor encourages the Asian student to choose a career path which best fits them and brings them joy, whereas the Asian student may understand that their career will dovetail into the family needs and that they will consider their family above and beyond their own needs. Now, this is a very stereotypical statement, and I understand that, but this is a real-life example of one of my friends who is a counselor in the Student Counseling Center, something that she had to work with, and it was important for her to be respectful and understanding that this person was from a collectivistic type culture, and she needed to counsel this student accordingly. Another way of exploring culture and communication is to identify how gendered a culture might be. Now, we would divide this notion along gender lines and identifying a culture as being either masculine or feminine or some combination thereof. In masculine cultures, there is a good deal of value placed on traditionally masculine ideals such as ambition, achievement, acquisition of material wealth, and industry. Examples of some masculine cultures are Austria, Japan, and Mexico. The United States is also considered a moderately masculine culture. Now, feminine cultures tend to value nurturance, quality of life, and service to others. Some examples of feminine cultures are Sweden, Chile, and the Netherlands. Now, Finland is a very highly feminine culture, and it happens to be one of the highest ranked in regard to supporting new mothers on maternity leave. It is a standard in Finland for a new mother to receive up to 36 months of maternity leave at 70% of her prior earnings. It's also common in Finland for men to be granted up to, I believe, 6 months of paternity leave. In the United States, paternity leave is unheard of, and an average of 2.8 months unpaid maternity leave is about the average here in the United States. Researchers estimate that there are almost 7,000 languages spoken in the world. The most commonly spoken languages are Chinese, Spanish, and English. Now, within these languages and from all the different places that these languages are spoken, there are varying norms and idioms within the same language. An example of a norm would be something that is common in a particular culture with the use of the particular language. So here in the United States, when greeting someone, we might say, "Hello, how are you? It's nice to meet you." Whereas when I studied Chinese, and I am open to being corrected by any Chinese or Chinese American students, when I studied Chinese, a common greeting when welcoming someone to your home was, "How long has it been since you've eaten?" And this was supposedly derived from when in ancient China, homes were very far apart, spread very far apart, and so a common greeting to welcome somebody in was, "Are you hungry? How long has it been since you've eaten?" Another example in Great Britain or in Australia might be "Good day," which is just a formal greeting, or a hello, informal greeting rather. We might also see some idioms, and these are just figures of speech. In the United States, the text mentioned "kick the bucket," which is an expression to die, or a rule of thumb, which is originally derived from the width of a stick that a man might punish his wife with. Little trivia for you there. But it's an expression, and if you said "rule of thumb" over in Great Britain, somebody might not understand what it is you're trying to say, and certainly somebody who is not a native English speaker that has not been exposed to these idioms. Now, when studying communication, it's also important to examine gender roles. Now, gender roles are a set of expectations for appropriate behavior that a culture typically assigns to an individual based upon his or her biological sex. Now, in general, there are 3 gender roles, although some researchers believe that gender may be identified more on a scale than by clear, discrete groups. But according to the text, and we'll go with that for now, in general, there are 3 gender roles, and these are masculine, feminine, and androgynous. And when a person doesn't fit into their typical gender roles, they are frequently met with harsh criticism. We might see an example of this in the politician Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton personifies some more masculine type traits, not necessarily physical traits, but the way that she communicates. And we're going to get into that just a little bit. But she's met with harsh criticism. Now, if a man were to communicate like she does, it would be considered the norm. But where she is a female and she communicates as she does, we perceive her as aggressive, and I have heard people use slurs to describe her behavior. Now, to define these concepts of gender roles, masculinity emphasizes strength, competition, independence, sexual aggressiveness, risk-taking, logical thinking, and I've quoted that, and acquisition of material wealth. The notion of masculinity also wishes to distance itself from perceived feminine traits. Femininity emphasizes empathy, emotional expressiveness, a focus on developing and maintaining relationships, interest in child rearing, and attention to personal appearance. Traditional femininity also includes submissiveness while downplaying intellect and career ambition. Androgyny is a combination of both of these, and it's a gender role distinguished by, as I said here, a combination of masculine and feminine traits. Now, don't mistake androgyny for gay, bisexual, or intersex. This is not indicative of sexuality, but more of a gender role. Now, there are some common ways in which masculine individuals and feminine individuals will communicate. I've not grouped these as men and women because it has been found that the different biological sexes may contain varying levels of gender identity. So I've grouped this off into masculine individuals and feminine individuals here. So to explore this, masculine individuals are more likely to be instrumental communicators, and this is straight to the point and problem solving. They are more likely to interrupt, talk over, give orders, and have stronger opinions. Topics of conversation tend to be less personal, and there is less affection communicated by masculine communicators. Whereas feminine communicators are more likely to be expressive talkers and to view communication as a way of establishing closeness and intimacy, where a masculine communicator might use words to solve a problem or to try to develop a relationship with an individual. A feminine communicator might use this communication to develop the relationship, but it is the communication itself, not necessarily the content, that a feminine type communicator is using to develop the relationship. This is a little confusing, but I hope that you can understand what I'm trying to say here. Feminine communicators are more likely to be less direct and use more emotional language. Typically, they are also more affectionate and will use more touch and softer communication here. An important tip, this is for the masculine individuals, in relationships with feminine individuals. Listen more and problem solve less. For our final slide here, I am a huge Family Guy fan. A good example of gendered communication here is in a Family Guy episode. It's season 2, episode 8, and I've put a link on the bottom there, and that link will allow you to access a couple of different methods for getting a hold of this. And Peter is sent to a woman camp as a punishment for sexually harassing one of his female coworkers, his boss, I think. He shows up there and he hates it, but after a while he learns to like it. And it's an interesting study on gender and the way that the different genders communicate with one another as he learns skills and new understandings of how to think and communicate in a more feminine way. It's pretty funny. If you're a Family Guy fan, definitely check it out. Season 2, episode 8. And hope you are well today.